Welcome to the Industrial IoT Spotlight, your number one spot for insight from industrial IoT thought leaders who are transforming businesses today. With your host, Eric Walenza.
Welcome back to the Industrial IoT Spotlight. I'm joined today by Peter Bourne. Peter is the CEO of BrightWolf, and BrightWolf is an interesting company. They're an enterprise platform or enterprise software company that also does very deep system integration support for their customers. And so they get very involved in the business, not just the technology side of deploying IoT solutions or building and deploying IoT solutions. Peter has a very interesting background. So Peter is also the strategic advisor for ProAxion Incorporated, as well as an entrepreneur in residence for Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network. And then Peter, you have a really deep background in a range of technology companies. So number one, Peter, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Before we really dig into your current work with BrightWolf, give us a bit of a background into some of the companies you've worked with before, some of the problems you've addressed, and how you ended up founding BrightWolf or becoming CEO of BrightWolf.
I've been, since my very first, hesitate to even call it a job, company, let's call it, out of college, and early stage inventor and entrepreneur. And my entire career arc, with the exceptions of several years working for acquirers of companies I've sold, has been in early to mid stage technology and really sort of commercializing technology. I came from a technology family. My dad was a software engineer before that was cool. And so I understand how that part of it works, but my focus really is on product market fit and on establishing commercial traction. So I've done that, kind of lost track of how many times. It's not quite 10 yet, but it's definitely more than 5 across telecom and enterprise over the last, I turned 50 last year. So I've been doing it for, 30 plus years at this point.
Yeah, great. And then I see before you became the CEO of BrightWolf, you were brought on as a strategic advisor. How did you end up in this role? And then what really attracted you to this company and made you want to kind of throw your chips into this particular company?
That's a common pattern for me. At the beginning of the section here, I said, that I'm an inventor. I'm actually not really an inventor, but by some standards I am. But in the very, very early stages of the company, there are people who have an idea. And for me to get involved, there needs to be a commercialization track, as I mentioned. That often takes several years. And so I get involved with the companies in an advisory or board capacity, usually 3 or 4 of them at a time, and help them from that seat try to mature and find a market where they have potential. That worked out quite well with BrightWolf. When I started, there were just the 2 founders, and I started working with them and helped them for a couple of years until we were north of $1 million run rate and had some substantial presence in the Fortune 1000 base, which is where I prefer to operate. And so at that point, they said, "Well, look, we're really good at a lot of things. Running and scaling companies is not really one of them. So, would you like to come and continue the work you've been doing, but with a more official, sort of seat at the table?" And I was thrilled.
Are the founders still deeply involved in the company?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Patrick Dempsey and James Brannigan. James is our CTO, and Patrick runs all of our delivery services organization.
So tell us a bit more about what you guys do. I think we'd been chatting before we started the call, and you mentioned that enterprise software tends to be kind of 20 to 40% service oriented, but often I think not by design, but by necessity. But in your case, it really does seem to be by design. So how did you develop this this service orientation as a company?
Actually, yeah, it's a great question. Yes, a VC friend of mine refers to that as the enterprise software myth. So BrightWolf started out by solving some problems that James and Patrick know how to solve, which are around connected systems, which I think we'll get to at some point here in the next hour. And in the beginning, there wasn't such a thing as IoT, or at least it wasn't being called that. And it was more about sort of M2M or those kinds of words were being used. But really the value of any enterprise system is in the data. And there is no sort of common ground as to how the data is collected, stored, managed, analyzed, et cetera, et cetera. So in effect, every data-oriented enterprise project almost what does require some services in order to be effective. And since that's where the data is, since the data is where the value is, that's an activity well worth undertaking. BrightWolf, like all companies, not like all companies, but like all software companies, let's say, wants to use as much of a common infrastructure as possible. It's not even fun for the employees, let alone for the clients, to have a consulting shop, repeatedly reinventing infrastructure, blocks and bricks. There are, in the IoT space, as we move from project to project, from customer to customer, we find that there's somewhere between 70 and maybe 80% commonality at this point between how the IoT systems need to look. But that 20% or 30% difference in the systems, not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, our customers want differentiation in the offerings that they're creating and taking to the market. And, they don't want to just sign up for somebody else's SaaS and have a more cookie cutter is a little pejorative, but you know what I mean, a more cookie cutter approach to their IoT offerings. If you're buying something like Salesforce, you don't really want that necessarily, with a bunch of engineers customizing that for your particular environment. It's a product, and you want to buy a product, and you want to be able to configure it more than customize it. When you're building a connected product system that's yours, and that you're going to take that then to your customers, you do want that customized. You want that differentiated, both in terms of trivial things like look and feel, but also in terms of how it integrates with your enterprise and how it integrates with your customer's enterprise. So yeah, we embrace the services part of it. It's what helps our customers differentiate themselves from their competitors. And the reason software companies all want more software revenue is because the multiples are better on that, right? We are privately held and entirely focused on customer satisfaction at this point. We have no outside shareholders to answer to who want better returns on their invested capital. And so that gives us the freedom to make sure that customer satisfaction is our top priority.
Who exactly would you be interfacing with at your clients? So you mentioned Fortune 1000 companies. It sounds to me like you're getting involved fairly early in the decision process, right? Because you're also playing an advisory role. Would you be talking primarily to business leads? Or is the IT department driving a lot of the decisions? Are they your primary interface? What does it look like when you typically start a deployment?
Great question, and that answer has had a journey to it as IoT has developed and matured in the world. Initially, and this is, I'll say, like 5 years ago, most of our primary engagements were with engineering departments. This is, lined up with the fact that at that time, the vast majority of IoT projects were, let's say, build it and they will come mentality. So, very leading edge in Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, right? So the super early adopters. Less charitably, a lot of those turned out to be science projects. Right. So, but as IoT's matured and as an industry, and BrightWolf has been a leader in this as well, as we've pushed towards business outcomes as the primary driver, our main interface with our customers has shifted. The primary decision maker and buyer inside our customers at this point is a line of business owner. It can be a product manager, or VP and GM of a division, and in fact, oftentimes the CEO of these major companies. We're talking $1 billion plus companies decides, look, we just need a connected, as part of our digital transformation strategy, right? We need a connected product solution that we can bring to the market. So today, like I said, it's primarily the line of business. That said, IT has been becoming more prominent, becoming a more active participant at the table, and been quite useful in that. IT is migrating as well, right? From sort of running servers in a closet somewhere to actually participating in delivering business outcomes. And so we're increasingly seeing IT as a partner in the IoT delivery cycle.
When do you get involved? Is it typically that your customers come to you and say, we want to build something, we know what we want to build, we've got a well-identified solution environment, and we need help doing this efficiently? Or Are you talking to companies about, kind of problems that they have, but they don't have kind of an eye on a feasible solution, and then really walking them through alternatives and jointly arriving at a potential solution?
It runs the full gamut there. The majority of our customers come to us at the point where they've already tried something. And there's a spectrum of things they might have tried. They might have tried to build it themselves and realized that is, at least at the infrastructure level, far more challenging than they had thought. Even with the wonderful things that you can access in the public cloud these days for helping you build things, it's still a complex architecture and data management problem underneath. So, like I said, the majority of our customers actually come to us having tried it one, sometimes two other ways, and come to the conclusion that that's not working for them, experience some kind of pain. However, I'd say maybe a third of our customers come to us quite early in the process and say, so, let's sit down and talk about the business outcomes and what we can do and how we can put something together quickly to test our sort of hypothetical value proposition to our customers, right? The early science project days, let's say, back 5 years ago, people could spend millions, literally, before they were even ready to try something at the customer. That's, clearly not the right way to go about it. And so we've seen a nice switch to favoring agility, getting something done quickly that is super focused, and taking that out into the customer base. And we work with, like I said, about a third of our customers on that basis. A surprising number of people have tried something already to build an IoT system and just sort of quietly either given up or failed or gotten frustrated.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend about their company's $20 million kind of healthcare app that was kind of quietly killed, right? Because it just didn't do the job, and that's a lot of money to invest in something. I mean, high risk, but I think companies are realizing there's ways to de-risk some of this development, right? And startups or smaller companies tend to be better at it than larger companies.
This is where our IP services balance comes back into play as well. Because we have the IP, the product, if you will, the reference system, we can do something in an order of weeks for most people and get it up and running and ready for customer pilots. And that allows them to, fail fast, I guess is the mantra these days, right? And learn quickly without investing heavily. I think those days of spending $20 million, hopefully those days of spending $20 million on a project that goes nowhere coming to an end, but I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic there.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I was reading about the newest generation of fighter jet, apparently roughly $1 trillion R&D effort that's way behind target and not really producing something that the military wants. So
classic case of scope creep, right? Everybody just kept piling requirements on until nothing got done.
Yeah, that's a good employment level, right? So making jobs. BrightWolf, interesting in that you are very service oriented, but you also have your own technology. How do you play with companies like ThingWorx, GE Predix, other platforms that are either providing some kind of data management service or analytics? Are they competitors? Are they competitors that you sometimes involve their technologies when it makes sense? Or how do you position yourself in the market relative to these other companies?
Our systems that we build always integrate with other people's something, either in the simple cases, data-centric systems like ERPs and CRMs and historians on the plant floor and those kinds of things. As it relates to IoT platforms, our integration points are with Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, specifically to PTC ThingWorx and GE's Predix. We know those folks. Ostensibly, you'd say we compete. In fact, those two, I'm going to leave Predix out for a second. We'll see how that adventure goes. It feels to me like GE may be moving in a different direction. But as it relates to ThingWorx, they are obviously a very prominent, sort of presence in the IoT marketplace, the approach that they have to provide a SaaS that customers can use works in cases where the companies don't really want to be software and data centric in the long term. And so, in that case, we're not the best fit. And something like ThingWorx is a great idea for those companies. We see many of those folks turn around, several number of years later and say, actually, now we're going to, take the next step in our digital transformation and migrate to something where they have more control over the system. But in the early stages, you can get something running with ThingWorx, and if that's all you need to happen, it's an answer that works just fine. So on the one hand, we compete. On the other hand, it's just a different approach. And in those cases, we're not the best answer for you.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at IoT1HQ and to check out our database of case studies on IoT1.com. If you have unique insight or a project deployment story to share, we'd love to feature you on a future edition. Write us at eric.walenza@IoT1.com.